All right. Good evening for those of you here on the East Coast. Good afternoon on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And if you have been keeping track of the promos that I've been placing up for the two shows that we have, this is the final show that we have for tonight. However, I am super excited to have our guest on, so give me a moment while I introduce them on. This guest that I have, they do not need any introduction, but for the sake of just giving a rundown of all the accolades that they have done thus far or accumulated thus far in their career, they are a four-time BMI Awards winner for their work in X2, Fantastic Four, Valkyrie, Jack the Giant Slayer, a two-time Saturn Award winner for The Usual Suspects, as well as Superman Returns for their efforts with as a composer, as well as a BAFTA winner and an Oscar winner recently for their contributions for Bohemian Rhapsody. So give me 1 second while I introduce John Ottman. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Why they now?
How's it going? Long time no speak. Good.
Okay, good.
But how have you been? How have things been? Because I know the last time we were speaking with each other, I was speaking with you just prior to a little show called the Oscars, prior to
yeah, that's right.
the nomination for Bohemian Rhapsody. So, how have things been since then?
Fine. COVID hit, and so things kind of slowed down for everybody. But it's that crossroads where you either continue what you've been doing or use the opportunity to do something else. Which, of course, anyone familiar with interviews or talks I've had, my aspirations have always been to direct films, and so and you got to take that plunge and learn to say no to things, which is a lesson that I haven't learned for a while. Because when there's a dangling carrot in front of you of doing a big score for a movie, and then of course being made to edit it in order to write that score, you take it. But then I got to the point where it's like, I can't double, triple duty anymore on these movies, and I need to do my own thing. So actually, some advice I was given by the producer of Bohemian Rhapsody is like, you have to say no to stuff if you want to develop something for yourself, So I'm doing that scary thing. I mean, unfortunately, I'm at a good place in my life where I don't, I can say no to things. And but having said that, I've been busy. I was busy for about 7 months on Star Trek Discovery. Actually, the show I was asked to come on as they call me consulting producer, which is basically a fancy title for overseeing all the editors during post-production, shaping the episodes. And the dangling carrot there was, if you help me out on this, there was a showrunner of the show that I could direct an episode in season 4. So I'll be directing an episode in season 4. So it'll be great as I won't say a hobby, but it'll be a fun thing for me to be a recurring director on a Star Trek show, because I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and so being able to float around in that universe and while doing other stuff as well would be fun for me.
Indeed, and it's funny you were, talking about that whole idea of having that carrot dangled in front of you and not knowing when to say no, even though it's kind of caused. I know we've had conversations about this, and you shared it with me in talking about your path and with Bohemian Rhapsody and even with past projects too of kind of burning the candle at both ends sometimes. It's still, I feel like, and whether you want to agree or not, it's worked to your advantage, where it seems like even when you kind of had the fire under you, you still managed to, or to be composed, so to speak, under pressure and to
you didn't see the skin coming off my fingers and the blood coming out. So, and I'm serious. So the 20 pounds I would lose doing all those tasks on those films, at least with Bohemian Rhapsody, people always are like, well, that must have been really, really hard, having done the movie with all the stuff that happened and no director being on, and and I was like, actually, it was great because no one was bothering me, and I didn't have a massive score to write. In fact, I decided even though there would have been a lot of good money in residuals, I decided that score wouldn't be right for the film. It would really make it feel like a movie of the week. So I only had one task for the first time ever, just editing the movie. Not that that's a small task, but obviously it's an encompassing life task to do when you're editing a film like that. But I didn't have to agonize about when am I going to have the freaking time to write the score, you know? So I just was able to hunker down and experience what most editors experience, where there's no monumental thing they have to do when they're finished, you know, or approaching the end, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, just before we just jump ahead to Bohemian Rhapsody, because there's definitely, a lot I want to, hop into that in terms of the process with that. I know we've spoken with it about it before, but I actually had some, additional details that I wanted to get into with you. But considering, thinking back on your schooling in terms of being prepared for what you obviously would eventually do once you got into the industry. Can you talk a bit about that interesting story? Because from what I understand, when it came to that composing component, that came slightly later, just by chance, just because of circumstance of needing to.
It's like it is with life. I mean, I think most people will look back on their careers and often say, some of the things they're doing are the last things they ever expected to be doing in their life, And I was always a filmmaker as a kid, making movies. And long story short, I fell into writing a score for the first feature I did with Bryan Singer. And only by necessity, because I've been writing music as a hobby. And long story short, we had a deadline for Sundance Film Festival, so I was the only guy around to do it. And I did it, and I realized, hey, I got a knack for this, and I love doing this. And as the story goes, when we put The Usual Suspects together, I said, all I want to do is write the score. And he said, hell no, you're never going to write a score for me unless you're the editor. So that's how the double duty blackmail thing happened, the dangling carrot, as it were. But yeah, I forgot what the question was, but yeah, I fell into it, and it was a great career. I mean, I should say it in the past tense. I still would love to write some film scores. It's just in my rejiggering, if some amazing film came along, I would jump at the chance. Or if it was like a small film, I would do for nothing, frankly, if it was something that was really fantastic, or if they want to pay me a crap load of money for a massive superhero film, I would do that again. But there's been, right now, the opportunities have been sort of, stuff I haven't really been warrant my time spending 14 hours a day in a little dark room, which I'm trying to get out of that room. So, but it's I wish, again, as we've talked about before, I wish I could split myself into 3 different people. One's directing, one's developing stuff to direct, one's writing scores, one's editing, whatever. But I have to sort of get away from that way of thinking, like, oh my God, all my peers are scoring 5 movies this year. What am I doing? It's kind of unhealthy to go down that road. You only live once, and you got to do what makes you happy. And I can knock on wood. There's no wood around here. Afford to be able to do what I want to do now. Do things that only interest me from a passion standpoint.
Gotcha. Yeah, because as you were saying, you were commenting on the superhero realm, and obviously, immediately comes to mind. I was just name dropping Fantastic Four, but obviously, even with the collaborations with X-Men come to mind that are absolutely memorable. So, in talking about the current landscape or I should say, the landscape of, I guess, genre-wise, what we've been seeing an influx of superheroes and the popularity of a lot of those characters and them being household names. Can you talk a little bit to that, and in many ways, being one of those forefathers of so to speak, of bringing those that genre into prominence? I mean, obviously, one film that comes to mind for me, I was going to say, is Blade, but I mean, X-Men is another one of those films that set that foundation for what we continue to see now.
And was one of the the only, or one of the few only forays into superheroes where it took superheroes seriously, or where they were not campy, but actually something to be believed. I wouldn't say it's the first one. I would say Superman, one of the all-time greatest movies ever made, in the 1978 version, I think did that as well. And that's why I think X-Men was sort of like inspired by that type of filmmaking, where you're taking seriously your characters. It's not frivolous. It's not, even though it's comic book. For better or for worse, actually, because X-Men films, aside from Days of Future Past, were not nearly as profitable as the other kind of more sort of like popcornish films. Not that X-Men's not popcorn, but you know what I mean. It's sort of dealing more overtly with, more under the surface, but overtly about social issues and so forth. And that's why I love being part of the X-Men world. So we'll see what happens with the X-Men with the Marvel now. I hope they continue that feeling. We'll see.
Yes, fingers crossed, indeed. Now, in speaking on that further, you touched on it a bit now, but I wanted to hop into it now. That idea of dual wielding, so to speak, of having being a composer and being an editor for a great deal of your career, and now after doing what you were discussing with Usual Suspects, and now even having a second go around of really being in a position where it was very from what you were explaining, very laborious, but rewarding, that you made the decision that maybe I should put one of these disciplines just to the back burner for a while. Can you talk a bit about that, and making that decision, that transition of perhaps putting composing aside for a moment, why you focus, as you said, on directing and even editing?
You mean basically what I was talking about earlier in the beginning? Well, I mean, again, aside from my work on Discovery Show, I've been sort of having projects in the works of trying to get off the ground, and I'm old enough to know that when something's hopeful, or I'm also a pessimist, so there's that too. When it feels like it's going, I don't really get excited by it until it actually happens. It's funny. Sometimes I'd be writing film score, and I wouldn't tell anyone I was doing it until it was finished in the can on the movie, because I know people that announce to the universe, "Oh, I'm hired on this thing," and then something goes wrong, they get fired, and they have to be really embarrassed by it. Or sometimes the film I felt I was on was so bad that I didn't want to tell anybody. I was embarrassed by it. And then like a year later, someone say, "Hey, I didn't know you did that movie. It's great," So I'm just that way. I don't have this. I'm taking this like tangent right now, but I don't have this like tell the universe what I'm doing. I just do it, and then afterwards, if it went well, I tell people, or let them discover it on their own. But yeah, I mean, not to rehash what I talked about in the beginning. It's I'm just making that decision right now to develop some projects. One looks hopeful, I'll just say. And then of course I get to go direct something for Star Trek next season. So I don't know if that answers the question, what you were getting at.
No, it does. I guess I just find it fascinating, is that the irony in being that you as I said, you burn the candle at both ends, but when you've been placed in that situation, it's turned out very well. You won awards.
I have to check that box. Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, in a strange way, it's like I was just telling someone the other day, I was like, I feel still burned out from what I went through for 20-something years, doing all those things. I'm still not over the burnout from that. And in a way, even though those are specific facets of a movie, editing, composing, whatever, and then they're both overwhelming tasks, I feel like just getting out of the room, of the editing room or the composing room, and just developing a project and being able to work at, well, before COVID, Starbucks or something, and get out of that room is so it's such freedom to me. And frankly, I'm less stressed out about it because, well, I have to deal with technical issues, which I'm just technically deficient. And so I'm always in my music studio and something's going wrong and I want to cry because I don't know how to fix it. It's like when my car breaks, I don't know what the hell to do. So it's those stresses that I don't have to deal with if I'm just sitting in not that it's easy, but when you're directing, you don't have to deal with those kind of things. You're just focusing on what's in your head and communicating. So anyway, I'm looking forward to, if it happens, to be able to do that from time to time. But having said that, if I was 30 years old, I would just direct anything. I don't care what it is, because you want to break into the business and do that. And now, being at my advanced age, it's like, I'm only going to do something that's going to get me out of bed and excite me. Otherwise, why put yourself through that? Because despite what I just said about not having to be in the room, directing is a nightmare. It's an all-encompassing thing to destroy your life for a year or two. And so only do that to yourself if you really, really believe and want to dream, eat, breathe that film. And I really know it's something I want to do when I go to bed at night, and if I lose myself in what that script is and imagine something, I know that's something that I really want to do.
Awesome. And in talking further about that idea of with the prior body of work that you've had with those two disciplines, and now doing more focusing your energies in directing, do you find that it has been that transition has been more streamlined or not as daunting because of the fact that you've had?
It's not as daunting, but I know that in the moment that I get a greenlit film, I'm going to freak out. But it's not, because I've done this for so long, and without going into detail, my duties as an editor and producer and composer on those films was even more than that. So let's just say I was on the set doing a lot of stuff, and over all those years and directing some scenes and so forth. It's for sure. Second unit and things like that, but actually the bona fide scenes, reshoots. So I want to say it comes to me naturally, but I'm sure when it's my own project, I'll freak out and just try to remain calm. But you have at some point you have to go with your instincts and be confident about, not cocky, but confident, because it's a collaborative medium and you have to be open to other ideas, absolutely. And but you have to have confidence in yourself. It's the same with film composing. When I first started writing film scores, you're terrified. You don't want to get fired, and so there's the temporary music in the movie, the temp score, and so you're a little afraid to veer from it because you want to do what they know, what you know they like, and you don't have the clout to walk in and say, hey, you know what, that music's not right here, and so forth. You kind of feel a little more. But then as you become more confident in your own craft and start, for me, when I started hearing a signature sound of mine, sort of approach I do to film composing, realize, oh, it's a little ism I've done here and there. Then you become like, you embrace it, and then you lose the fear. Basically, that's my main thing I'm trying to say. Once you lose the fear in your craft, it sort of unleashes you to be even more creative and be confident in your instincts.
Definitely, I guess more so. I meant in terms of speaking to someone else who is now in that. Now taking over that duty. So being able to speak that language, because sometimes I know if you have someone else, they're not able to speak to that properly. But since you've been there and done that, being able to do that.
Analogy to writing film scores. I wasn't musically trained, and so when I would start my first film score, which is Usual Suspects with an orchestra, I was like, I didn't know even how to talk to the orchestra at that point, in terms of musical jargon. And then literally they'd give me the microphone and I would speak in ways they probably rolled their eyes because nothing I was saying was in musical terms whatsoever. But after doing a number of scores, you learn the jargon so you can communicate more effectively to the musicians and the directing especially. It's like if there's a way you can explain to people, not dictate to an actor, their performance, not acted out, which is a very hard thing to do for new directors. But actually, as you get more mature and you build your capacity to communicate ideas and what's behind the character and communicate in such a way where the actor gets what you're saying without having to act it out for them. And frankly, the years of diplomatic skills, which I always tell new filmmakers, that's half of making movies. It's not just, it's not like you're hired and go in a room and do your thing and say, well, here it is. It's a lot of diplomacy, a lot of, I'm not going to say fighting, but passionately stating your position and why, and and as long as you can give creative reasons why for the good of the film, people will listen to you. And as long as they don't feel you have an agenda, like, I know a lot of composers, for instance, get defensive, about, well, it's how can you make me do it any other way? This is, and you can't have that attitude. There's many ways to skin a cat, and definitely when you're making a movie, when you have test screenings and then afterwards, everyone comes together, the executives and the creative people and the financiers and anyone, it gets together at the table and you hash it out. And it's all this spin and interpretation of the test scores and what people, how many people in the audience said this, and one producer will spin it their way and say, well, clearly, everyone's thinking this about this scene, and like, excuse me, that's only 6 people out of 200 said that, so let's keep that in perspective. It's all those kind of things you have to go through, and the barter system. The Bohemian Rhapsody was the hardest part of making the movie, because I was the only one left, and I'm used to this from the other films I worked on with Brian, but I was the guy having to fight for what I wanted with the studio, and get together and play the games you have to play. Frankly, do a test screening without a scene that you really want in, but you're kind of doing it for the studio. That's a dangerous game to play, because you may never get that scene back. But there's things you have to do. Bartering, basically. There was part of a Live Aid in the end where there was a bazooka pointed at the ending song. And I'm like, to save that song, I had to sort of point the bazooka they had somewhere else and blow that apart. And so I had to, rob Peter to pay Paul to sort of save that sequence. It's endless. Visual effects just in that sequence alone, I was $2 million over, so I had to, you have to be pragmatic, and you have to sort of rejigger it and eliminate shots and rethink about how you're going to compose it. And, blow up shots, get rid of the sliver of green screen. Anything you can do to preserve what your original design of the scene was. And it's funny because, and I always tell people this, a janitor can walk in and have a great idea. Don't dismiss anyone's idea. There's always some idiot on a film, but still listen, because out of the 100 things that idiot may say, one might be something that saves the scene. So, and with the Live Aid, for example, just cutting $2 million out actually made the sequence better, because I had to rely on using the audience shots and so forth and building to the big fancy shots, rather as opposed to blowing the wad up front. So it made the sequence have somewhere to go. And having to open up wider and wider and wider as the scene went on, and get more expensive as the scene developed, and it made it a better payoff.
Gotcha. And to speak to obviously the climate that we're in now, and how that's affected the industry, and how it's affected how films are being done, and sometimes things are being placed on hold temporarily and then starting back up, and just the abrupt back and forth that's been happening with some projects. Can you talk a little bit to that as well? Because I know, have you found trend-wise that based on your toolbox of what you're capable of doing, whether it's directing, whether it's editing, whether it's composing, that you've had to come full circle back to some things, because just by virtue of other folks that I've spoken with that are, your contemporaries that are also filmmakers, they may not have as much happening currently because they aren't physically on a set. But those that I know that are composers, they're still in the room, they're still working, despite some of the other disciplines that are happening.
Talking about because of COVID, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I only had my stint on Discovery be interrupted by COVID, and because it was a post-production situation, we quickly rejiggered, and I was working with the editors via, it's like this. It was a little rough at first, but when we figured it out, it was basically the same situation. He's sitting behind their backs and kind of directing them. But for me, that's my only frame of reference. And I know I left the show after I was done shaping the episodes, and then they continued with post. So I didn't witness how they actually pulled off doing the visual effects and the score virtually. I know that the composer had, all the musicians at their place playing individually and mixed it all together. So, everyone's got to do what they have to do. And I think in post-production, it's working pretty well for people, and they're all adjusting. As far as behind on set and stuff like that, I don't have any idea how that's working right now. I know with Discovery, when I go to Canada for that, it's still the same thing. You had to sit in a room for 14 days, quarantine. And then once you get on the set, I don't know what they're doing. How many, are there limitations of who you can mingle with and who you can't? Is crew separated from cast? I don't have any idea. So it'll be interesting, because this is going to go on for another year probably. So people have to prepare for that.
For sure. And
there's one kind of weird thing about it. I talk to people. I mean, you're trying to find the silver lining in things. It's almost like a great equalizer, though, the situation. People always in this business feel bad because someone else is getting ahead and someone else is doing more than they are. And this is sort of like kind of put everyone on the equalizer. Yeah, and so everyone feels better about where they're at, because no one else can be really working that much either, So I don't know, there's a silver lining,
Gotcha. So obviously, super exciting, the news that you were sharing about Discovery. Are you able, and I know last time we were talking about, and I guess it just got, cut just by virtue of where things are right now in the industry. I think at some point they were talking about continuing on the story with Rhapsody. I
don't think that's going to happen. I know there's talk of a re-release, and so I was talking to the producer actually a couple of weeks ago, and I said, well, here's your opportunity, put some scenes in no one's seen before. I mean, I know they have the extended live aid, people have seen that, but the producer and I like to say, when we walked away from Bohemian Rhapsody, we got 90% of what we wanted, which is really great. That's a lot to get from what you wanted after you walk away from the movie. But there was things that I would have loved to say put in film, which were flashbacks to Freddie's childhood, which I think really impacted even more the emotional moment at the end when he hugs his father. So I would love to put those scenes back in. I have no idea if they would be willing to do that, but there is going to be a re-release of some sort,
All right, cool. Give me 1 second. I got one special surprise before I let you go.
Okay.
All right, I thought that it would be fun because I saw this in my attic, and when I was looking at the list of credits, found this.
Oh.
I found this in my attic. So for those of you who are not,
well, that could be a whole different interview.
Urban Legends Final Cut, but I have this on VHS. I still have this on VHS.
Love it or hate it. That was a great experience. Again, I could talk about that for 2 hours. The whole history of that film and so forth, and how. Well, anyways, I could talk forever. I won't go into it, but it was sometime we can talk about it. Yeah.
Definitely. So again, John, as always, man, thanks so much for coming on and coming back on the show and
great.
Talking about body of work and all the interesting things that happen BTS style with a lot of
well, hopefully I can give you more exciting things to tell you about next time. So
yeah, definitely. But before I let you go,
I've been sort of enjoying life too. Huh?
Yeah, I was gonna say before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Let's see. I'm old school, so it's pretty much Facebook or what else? That's pretty much all I'm on. Oh, Twitter. I'm on Twitter. At John Ottman, I think. I don't even know what my address is, though. Let me see. Hold on. Let me look at what it is, but not Instagram. 'Cause I barely ever get on there except put like a turtle picture for my pond, my koi pond or something. I didn't really latch on. I didn't stick with Instagram because I just like there's so many different things to have to. It's at Real John Ottman.
Gotcha.
So at Real John Ottman, Twitter. Yeah.
Cool.
And I need more Twitter followers because I've been on Facebook for so many years and I was never on Twitter. And then I was on Twitter and then my account stopped working. So I'd lost all those, what do you call it? Twitter friends or whatever you call it. So, yeah.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. Be sure to follow John on Twitter. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Guys. Thanks so much for watching. You can find us on Facebook, which you're watching now live streamed. However, we do encore episodes on YouTube. You can also find us on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited and on Twitter at Moving Shake UNLTD. And of course, you can find me, Brandon Choi ENT on Twitter and Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. So with that being said, thanks for watching again. Be safe out there. Thanks again, John, and see you guys soon.
All right. Bye. See you later.